Tuesday afternoon to all of you. Welcome into the Week 6 Bold, Bald Showdown.
Showdown?
It's a showdown. Bold, Bald Breakdown. I completely had a...
You blanked.
Yeah, I did.
I thought you were just playing that up.
No, we should play that up. We could
Wow.
play that up, but no, I was hoping maybe you'd finish it. But yes, the Bald,
Well,
Bald
the chemistry's
Breakdown.
not 100% there. Right?
Week
You know?
six-
I
week
just let you
six.
take the reins and I'm here for the ride.
Well, I mean, here's the real crux of it all. I screwed this up so badly this week. Why not just screw up Week 6, the Bold Bald Breakdown? My good buddy Nick Shook joins me each and every week as he does. He's on loan from the NFL Network and NFL.com. The Browns did indeed beat the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. Nick, I don't have to tell you, but I will, and I'll tell others. It was last Monday, right, Bohm? Last Monday, that I said I thought the Browns had. I think I said no chance, and they were going to get the shit kicked out of them by the San Francisco 49ers. This is why there's a cliche that goes around in sports, and essentially goes something like, there's a reason why they play the games. And Sunday, hell, Saturday, Dion up 29. There's a reason they play the games, and damn it, thank God they do, and thank God the Browns went out there, handed the Niners their first loss of the year, and jumped above the 500 mark at 3-2.
It was a shocking turn of events, but as one of my favorite podcasts I listen to, college football, Josh Pate of The Late Kick, he always says this is why they play the games on the field and not on paper. Because,
Yes.
look, I was right there with you last week. I thought, man, it's going to be really tough. You never want to speak in absolutes, especially, in front of a microphone. But it sure felt like the Browns had very minimal chance, if at all, of winning the game, other than the fact that they were also out there on the field with the other team. And boy, did we learn our lesson, as the NFL so often teaches us, whether we want to hear it or not, that on any given Sunday, this league is so close in talent, any team can win, and the Browns found a way to do it.
And so I think we start with the defense. There's plenty to get to and plenty to dissect from this one, which we will do over the next hour or so. Coming off the Baltimore loss, I think everybody felt, myself included, but I'll just speak for myself. I know I felt like, okay, the defense didn't play well. We heard Juan Thornhill, some comments that he made. Guys weren't tackling, but it did feel like a one-off. Like, you know what? It's 90 minutes before kickoff, and they find out that Deshaun Watson can't go, and that Dorian Thompson-Robinson will go, the fifth-round rookie, and I think it all just kind of snowballed from there. I'm not making excuses, but I'm saying that to say this, that I wasn't necessarily worried that the defense wasn't what we thought it was. That said, I did not expect them to dominate the Niners. And I know there were a couple of injuries I'm sure we'll get to on the Niners side of things. But oh my, did Kyle Shanahan have his hands full with that Browns defense on Sunday.
Yeah, I feel like I missed a key note in some research compiled. There is a history of this between Kyle Shanahan and Jim Schwartz.
Yeah.
And, once I discovered that after the Browns had already won, I thought, oh, man, that should have been one of the, key signs that the Browns actually did have a chance. But even if they held them to 0 points, I still didn't trust their offense to actually go out and put enough points up on the board to win the game. And that really comes down to P.J. Walker, the quarterback who ends up playing in place of both Deshaun Watson and Dorian Thompson-Robinson after the Browns learned that the rookie wasn't ready for the bright lights of a game like that. And he didn't play well necessarily. He just did barely enough to give them a chance to win, which is more than I was going to give that offense credit for, because even when Deshaun Watson has been in the game, they haven't really been all that great offensively. I thought, look, I had the Niners winning 26-16, and of course the Browns have taken to social media to list my pick and everyone else's pick and subject us to the roasting that we all deserve. I will happily take that this week. Please give me that.
You gave them more credit than I did. I mean, I had it at, I think my final score was like 28-7.
Yeah.
I didn't think they again, PJ Walker getting the start. And it wasn't just that. You had all of the other injuries, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you know what? I mean, it got to the point where by the time we heard about Batonio being out and some of the other injuries, we had people, chiming in on Friday's show going, well, you know what? It seems like the Browns are just kind of conceding this one. Like, hey, it sucks. You don't want to lose. And I know they weren't conceding, but I'm saying
it felt like
thinking big picture, get these guys healthy. It's not a divisional game. And how could you not think that maybe that was the route they were going? And then, hey, Jim Schwartz and that defense, we've been saying it since week 1, with the exception of the game against Baltimore. But like I said, we thought that was more of an aberration than anything. They might be the best unit in the NFL, the best defense. And what's the stat now that
they have allowed the third fewest yards in the last 53 years of NFL football.
5 games, just over 1,000 yards total.
1,002. Only 2 teams have allowed less yards since 1970.
Boom, is that good? That's good, isn't it?
I gotta say, I'm impressed.
That's good. Yeah, don't pretend like you're not impressed. That was it. Was really exciting. We still, you want to start stacking wins. I think Kevin Stefanski even said it after the game in the locker room with the guys. Like, this is great, and it's right. He's right. I mean, like, this is. We've well documented and well talked about the roller coaster season, the up, down, the one that you don't expect them to lose, they lose. The one you certainly don't expect them to win, they do win. But this is where you want to start to see a more consistent effort. Now, offensively, that's going to be maybe impossible until you have your quarterback back in the form of Deshaun Watson. When he will be back is still up in the air, which I'm sure we'll touch on.
Yeah, we will definitely get into
But from
that.
a defensive standpoint, and you've got the Colts coming up next, which we'll get to a little bit later, but the thinking is they lose their quarterback. This defense, another opportunity to feast coming up this Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, the Browns, if you think about the gauntlet of teams that they've played so far, it has not been, exactly even. We're not looking at a monolith here when it comes to quarterback quality here, because you had Joe Burrow, but an injured Joe Burrow. You got Kenny Pickett, but Kenny Pickett who is not comfortable and probably still isn't comfortable. Ryan Tannehill, Lamar Jackson, who beats you almost single-handedly. The bye week, no quarterback, thank God there, you get a break. And then Brock Purdy. The tests that you've seen so far do not necessarily give you an indication that they're just going to go dominate a quality quarterback. But the good thing is they're not facing a quality quarterback in week 7. I'm already losing tracks of weeks. We haven't even gotten to week 8, and I'm already losing track.
That early bye screws it up for everybody.
It kind of does. Yeah. It's a good line of demarcation because I can think, all right, so the Browns are 3-2. They had a bye, and this week will be week 7, if you want to do the mental math real quick. But Gardner Minshew has done just enough to help the Colts be competitive, except for last Sunday when he actively lost them the football game. So I think that I feel really good about the Browns defense. If the first 5 games were not enough to prove that this unit is for real, well, just think. You're going to play a guy that turned the ball over 4 times last week against Jacksonville. So a lot to like. I have to go back, though. I know we already kind of set the scene before the Browns went in to win over the 49ers, but I just think about my buddy. Every time I think about the Browns, I think about my best friend, because he is one of those just emotionally volatile fans where they win.
Oh, he's not alone.
He takes pictures at the stadium as he's leaving on the red line, which, by the way, he takes the red line. Look, we're going to go a little inside Cleveland here. He parks in Tower City in the lower lot and takes the red line from there to the stadium. And I said to him, I go, wait, what? Why? That's not even a long walk. And he goes, I'm getting on the tram. I'm taking it in. I don't care. I'm going in. I'm just in and out, in and out. But he's now mad because when they win a game like that and people show up, now it's going to take forever to leave.
Yeah, I think the reason he does that, I would say, is that's where you get you loosen up the vocal cords, because while you're waiting for the train is the here we go Brownies here. So it's kind of like a warming of the cords.
Yeah.
before.
But I like to
before the
lean
game.
on his emotions because they win and he's on cloud nine and they lose. And it's, I mean, he and I talked all week. You know, he's got season tickets and we're just talking about the market and how nobody wants to go to this game. You couldn't move him if you tried. He's like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to go for the misery. I'm going to go watch the meltdown. This is where our season ends right now when you play the San Francisco 49ers with a backup quarterback who did his best work in the XFL, and they went and won. They went and won the game. I mean, not only is it's not just a win, they all count the same, but this one could be so monumental.
Oh, yeah.
But it all depends on how they perform in the next month.
And this is where when we talk about it, I know, folks, I know it sounds ad nauseum, and at times it is, but like if the Browns are going to take that next step, it's, you know, winning a game like they won on Sunday and then bouncing back and winning a game that they should win against Indianapolis, winning a game they should win against Seattle. And that's not to say, you know, are they light years ahead of those teams? No, and again, a lot to be determined at the quarterback position, but there's a lot of talent on this team, certainly on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, I don't want to peek ahead here to our numbers that matter, but we were, after the Tennessee game, when the Browns held Mike Vrabel's group to 94 yards of total offense, which is still just absolutely mind-boggling. 215 yards of total offense for the 49ers. And again, I know they had Christian McCaffrey out with an injury for a little while and Deebo Samuel. But 250, that is the lowest total yard mark under under Kyle Shanahan since he took over in 2017. Think about that.
Yeah, and they're doing this to every team they play almost every team. Save for Lamar Jackson, they've dcan this to every.
Okay? Let's get into this a little bit. Let's get nerdy, shall we? Let's get nerdy.
You can put my glasses on.
You can borrow mine.
I wear contacts.
Then I won't be able to see. Okay. One of the things, and I heard this late in the week, and it was kind of, I'm not going to say I didn't pay attention to it. I found it interesting, but then I thought, don't even waste time on it. It's going to be a blowout. Browns don't have a chance. And that was that Brock Purdy did not do so well in man coverage. If the Browns played man, and you know, the Browns have been, normally they are a man coverage team, and they certainly played a lot of man late in that game. And it, this, it requires your quarterback to be very active or to be very accurate, get the ball out on time, all that sort of thing. And I think that the Browns, it's almost like, man, they play that aspect of it played right into the Browns' hands. So we've heard all about Brock Purdy just kind of doing exactly what he needed to do. Ultimately, what was it the Browns did that moved him off of his spot, so to speak, and allowed that defense to flourish and him to struggle really for the first time in his career in a regular season game?
Well, it's, you talk about man coverage. Man coverage only works if you can pressure the quarterback, because essentially what it does is in that 2.5 second window to get the ball out, it tightens down the coverage, gives them less room to throw into, right? But if you can get after the quarterback and speed up that clock, say you speed it up to 2.3 or 2, then suddenly it's even harder to complete those passes. You also have to have defensive backs that are good at blanketing in coverage, and the Browns do. They've got 3 of them. Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, well, MJ Emerson as he's known, and Greg Newsome can all do it really well. They've got a talented group of safeties. They have a secondary that plays well together. They don't make a lot of mistakes, unlike the last 2 years under Joe Woods. So it's about working in tandem. It's about the defensive backfield playing tight coverage. It's about the pass rush getting after the quarterback. And I think that what you saw was a Browns front 4 that, again, and sometimes front 7, depending on when Jim Schwartz decided to dial out the blitz, can cause problems for opposing offenses. Even with good offensive lines. Niners have a pretty good offensive line. They can run the ball pretty well. But the Browns have been so good up front at getting after the quarterback in most situations that it makes the coverage job a little bit easier. Brock Purdy faced a career-high pressure rate that was nearly 50%. That's the front doing their job. It makes it easier for the defensive backs. It explains why he wasn't able to ever get comfortable, because this is a guy who, when he has time to throw, will pick apart a defense because he just trusts his reads, his progressions, his processing ability is very quick. He plays as if he's been in the league for 5 years or longer. But when you speed him up, suddenly he starts to look a lot more human than he did when he's got time to throw. And I think they flat out made him uncomfortable, and that made the job easier for the guys in the back end. There was a number of throws where, he was throwing to the spot that he should throw to in the progression, but he threw to it early because he had such little time to throw. And you see Brandon Ayuk almost there, almost going to catch it, but he's not there yet because it shouldn't be thrown in that exact spot in that time. So the Browns defense, what they did more than anything to unsettle him and produce his worst game of his career and his first loss, by the way, congratulations, Browns, is they just made life difficult for him. And it's been too easy for him for too long.
Week 6 of the Bold Bald Breakdown right here on the Big Play Sports Network. I'm Chico Borman. He is Nick Shook with NFL.com and NFL Network. Browns a winner over the 49ers. Yes, it did happen. Browns a winner over the 49ers. They moved to 3-2 on the season. They will be on the road the next couple of weeks, beginning with this Sunday in Indianapolis. We'll be breaking that one down here in just a bit. How much, one of the things that going into a San Francisco game and a San Francisco game where it's Kyle Shanahan calling the offense, and this is one of the things I was very scared about. Even with the great talent you have on defense, you're worried that, okay, Kyle Shanahan, there might not be anyone better that's able to use that aggressiveness against you with all of the window dressing. And so in my mind, two of the guys that really, and this isn't to make excuses, but it's fact. I mean, when they lost Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey, I thought not only does it make it easier from, okay, those are two of your best weapons, but those are two of the guys that really, you're constantly wondering, okay, where's he going? Is he going to be matched up in the flat with a linebacker? Is he across the middle? Where's Deebo at? And once those two guys, you talk about interchangeable players, those are two guys that you just can't really just substitute in and go, okay, well, we're just going to pick up where we left off. I thought those were two very significant injuries, and credit to the Browns. They took advantage of it.
Yeah, and you can't evaluate this game without pointing that out. I think that obviously has to be there, but it doesn't have to serve as an excuse for why the Browns were able to win a game. Now, Deebo Samuel only played 8 plays. That is a playmaker and a big element of their offense that's suddenly out of the mix and makes it a little bit easier to defend them. But McCaffrey was in there until, midway through the third quarter. It's not like he missed the massive chunk of the game. He just missed the last quarter and a half with an injury. So you still have to give a lot of credit to the Browns defense and what they did. What I found to be interesting, and maybe the injuries have a little bit to do with this, is, so often in the past you've seen Browns teams, and I may be speaking from, a history of fanhood and everything else, but so often in the past you saw a Browns team that would go into halftime with a lead. They would be, wow, I can't believe they have a lead. And you knew that the opposing coaching staff was going to go in there and make the adjustments that would allow that team to come back and beat them soundly. But now these Browns tend to make their own halftime adjustments, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, still a lot left to be desired, but defensively, I mean, they were much more successful in the third quarter specifically against this Niners offense. I think they had like -1 yards in the third quarter or something along those lines.
You look at that first drive that San Francisco had, and then like after that,
it was nothing. Script was out.
Yeah,
they had already gotten that done, and Jim Schwartz was on his game. He was off and running. He was ready to counter anything Kyle Shanahan had coming. And again, it goes back to that history. Some guys just got another guy's number, and I think that was one of those instances in which you have a defensive coordinator who has a lot of experience and has a specific experience of dominating somebody else, mentally. And that's what's funny is the reason that the Niners are such a good football team is they are a complete team in that they have personnel that can make a difference at every area on offense and defense, whether it's running back, receiver, left tackle, quarterback. But when you take some of that out, it makes it a little bit more difficult, and it makes the job that much tougher because they're a clean operation. Kyle Shanahan has this team coached up well. They execute really well, but what they really rely on is good execution and the playmakers to maximize it. You see it kind of with the Browns offense. No Nick Chubb in that backfield right now, and for the rest of the season, you see the difference in the run game. Yeah, they racked up a good amount of yards on the ground, but they did it in unorthodox ways. They did it with a few pop plays. Not the consistency that you saw from a guy like Nick Chubb because Nick Chubb is elite. When you lose a McCaffrey, suddenly that offense that's executed so well just doesn't have the same potential because you don't have that special player back there. So when they lost McCaffrey, it was like, all right, well, no matter how well they're executing, it's not going to matter. Then you add in the Jim Schwartz element where we're throwing them off and they don't really know what to do in these certain situations. And you have a game where suddenly you have the power. It's tilted in your favor. I think about one possession, I think it was early fourth quarter, where the Niners got the ball back after the Browns were forced to punt. And it was like 3 straight passes and gone.
25 seconds. That's it.
Done.
Yeah.
Right back to the Browns. And I was like, wow, that is both not who the Niners are, and also this Browns defense is playing really well right
And that's also something the Browns would do.
Yeah.
I mean, how many
they
times throughout
did do
the
that.
game when we get to that, and then the actual kick itself by Jake Moody, I mean, was there anybody? And this is truth serum here. Was there anybody out there that really felt like Jake Moody was really going to miss?
No.
No. This is how this movie ends every single time,
Yes.
and then he didn't miss, or he did miss, and it's like.
Even
Oh my
you're
God.
still not sure of it.
Yeah, I still don't know.
Yeah.
I'm still a little foggy.
Yeah. I
That's
understand.
old age and
well, it
other
was
things too, but yeah.
kind of a foggy day out there anyway with the
Right.
weather and everything
Right,
else.
right.
I do have one thing to say. You can take this personally if you want. To every person who pauses their DVR and rewinds it 10 seconds and gets their buddy to get out a fan or pillows or a vacuum cleaner or some other prop, as if you did that in real time, we all know you're lying.
Yeah.
It's good content, but we all know you're lying. Just tell us that straight up. Transparency is
Punching
key.
the TV, like.
The fake TV smashes and stuff like
yeah,
that?
you had I think you had one with I think it was a Steelers fan.
Oh, he said he was going out in the yard.
Yeah.
That's a
It's
classic
like,
video.
Man, oh man.
I saw the vacuum one from Sunday, and I was like, oh, no way. And then I thought, and I was like, there's no chance. Because they're all on the right side of the TV. They're blowing it this way. They're No.
Week 6 of the Bold Bald Breakdown. Browns a big winner on Sunday. Kind of unexpected. Not kind of, it was unexpected against the San Francisco 49ers. So they're above 500 at 3-2. They get set for the Indianapolis Colts coming up this weekend. Will Deshaun Watson play? Won't he play? Well, we'll have to wait and see. As you can imagine, Browns are going to continue to be hush-hush on this front. One of the things I did want to bring up, we were talking about Jake Moody, and I know it's one of those where you don't really talk about it unless they're bad. Kind of, Cade York, and oh my gosh, now he's become the number one topic in training camp, and who wants to talk about a kicker that you're probably going to end up getting rid of, which you did. I got to give a lot of credit to Dustin Hopkins. I mean, on a night, or on a day, where the weather wasn't perfect, it's still, I mean, he's still figuring out. Remember when he first came in and he's like, yeah, I hear it's, it can be a nightmare or whatever. He's figured it out, at least so far. And without him nailing some of those field goals and really leaving no doubt, I mean, splitting the uprights, Browns aren't looking at a W.
Not all of those field goals, but most of those field goals, and the ones that matter the most. And
Yeah.
I think that's the difference. And you know what? To come through in the clutch in a low-scoring game
Huge.
with Phil Dawson in the house, Dustin, you have seized the moment, my friend. You have maximized what could be produced from that day. You deserve a game ball. I don't know if they gave you one, but you deserve one because, as we know, they struggle to get the ball in the end zone. Which,
Boom. Boom, do we have some YouTube comments?
Just it feels relevant right now, Chico. Our pal Ronald chiming in. Lake Erie is on our side, and then he says in all caps, "No dome."
Oh.
Well, Jimmy Haslam might have a few words to say about that because,
Well, the good news is I believe they can't put a dome on that stadium. As for what they might do in the future.
Let me, we'll stray a little bit here now that you brought that up. Roger Goodell, you and I both know, Nick, and Roger Goodell doesn't do anything by accident. He's talking about London, and they've had a few games there, and Jacksonville twice, and whatever. How serious do you think he is, or do you think he's just trying to gauge interest when he throws out there maybe having the Super Bowl in London?
It's more possible than it is in the city of Cleveland right now. I'll tell you that, because you don't have a dome here and you don't have the infrastructure necessarily to host that, right? Okay. I also think that it's as much realistic as it is wishful thinking. And I think you're onto something with the gauging. I don't think he necessarily gauges the reaction. He already knows what he's going to do. I don't think he really lets the public reaction sway him that much. But what I do think is very much in play is thinking outside the box, leaving all possibilities open for an international league. Because, hey, you know what? We are supposedly like 5.5, 6 years away from the return of, what is it, hypersonic or whatever flight. What was the old plane back in the day that used to be able
Concorde?
to get you? Yes, the Concorde. They're supposed to bring that back.
God, I love having Bohm here.
Yeah, they're supposed to bring that back in 2029. Is that what it is? What is it? I can't remember what it's called. Hypersonic or something like that?
Supersonic, hypersonic.
Something like that, yeah. Where you can travel in a plane at speeds that you currently cannot reach.
Okay.
I remember. Now we're on the same page, yeah. So if you do that and it cuts down travel time, then suddenly it's more feasible. I do not think it was by mistake that they had the Jaguars do kind of a home-and-home sort of things in London with those 2 games. It's a test, and they admitted they were tired and they had a hard time adjusting their clock. Guess what? They won this weekend. So, check. There's one hurdle cleared for maybe having a team over there eventually. Who knows?
When it comes to the biggest,
it's America's greatest sporting holiday. It's one of the biggest ones in the world. Why would you put it in London, right? Because you want it to be the world's biggest holiday.
It's one thing. Yeah, I like that. It's one thing to say, you know what, some fans are going to be a little upset. It's another.
Who? The people that can't get a ticket anyway? You know how hard it is to get a ticket?
The people that they want it. I mean,
all right, Bengals fans flew to L.A. and were out there all week for that Super Bowl. You're going to tell me that they're not going to go to London?
No, okay, but it's a pride thing.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
That would not go over well.
Unless there's a team there, and maybe this is the way that you enter into that. I think anything is possible with this league. The way the league has grown since I was a kid to now, anything is possible, because in case you haven't paid attention, it ain't slowing down. Anytime soon, it ain't slowing down. So I'm not going to make any guarantees, but the fact that it's floated out there is, it could be a possibility. I guarantee you someone's exploring it. They already have a plan projected on some PowerPoint deck. This is how we would do it if we did it. I don't think it's coming in a couple years, but maybe eventually. Hypersonic flight.
Okay, what would the I don't know this. I'm sure you do, being the well-traveled, and you know the hypersonic.
Oh no, it's supersonic. I was
supersonic.
Wrong. Hyper.
Seattle, Seattle supersonic. It's the Jack Sigma plane.
it's the Sean Kemp before he got fat, and I'm allowed to say that because I'm wearing a shirt from that era.
That's right, absolutely. Wearing it well.
Oh, thanks.
Look, shook. Is that now? That's got to be an XL, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah. Okay, I was going to say, because that's large. You're probably cutting off
shoulders
some circulation
somewhere.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. London, I don't know London's weather, but you're telling me London in February is like glorious?
Well, I've never been there.
Yeah, I haven't either. I'm trying to think like.
New York in February is not glorious. They lucked out when they had the Super Bowl there. You know what the rule is you build a new stadium in the NFL, you get a Super Bowl.
Right. Buffalo. Yeah, exactly.
Well, they technically built a new stadium with NFL capabilities for Tottenham Hotspur.
It's like, but see, this is where I will say, and I'm not really making a case for, Chicago, or because that's what those are the people you're going to hear from. When I say people are going to be upset, it's not so much people that can't get a ticket. It's going to be the people that are upset are going to be the people in markets like Chicago, markets like Cleveland that are going, wait a minute. So we can't get a Super Bowl, but London can? Like, come on.
You know what's going to be the worst part about all of it is if they actually do it is figuring out what time to play the game. Because right now all you deal with is a 3-hour difference. Like when you do a Super Bowl in Arizona or in LA.
6?
Yeah, it's a 6:30. It's usually like a 6:07 or 6:27 kickoff. And like you're out West Coast, you're like, okay, this game's gonna be like 3:30. That's fine. It actually works out pretty well. Or maybe they back it up a little bit more, but you're usually in that same window of time. What do you do in London? You're 5 hours ahead. Like they do those games at 9:30 in the morning on the East Coast. What do you do? How do you play that? Is it a noon game? Big noon Sunday for all the marbles?
I don't see. I guess all I'll say is this: I'm all about growing the game. I don't think you need to have a Super Bowl over there, and I'm also okay with hey, if you can't really have all of the festivities, and it's not just the game; it's the week leading up to. And it's
you're preaching the choir, my friend.
So I mean, that's where, like, hey, it was great. Minnesota, you had one, but it wasn't just the game and, oh, well, you got a dome or something like that. It's, oh yeah, well, we got a lot of people here coming from all sorts of places, and they're kind of snowed in. Like, you don't want that. You want people. That's where, like, the weather, being nice weather, Arizona, Florida, whatever, you've got so many more options. So I'm totally fine with that. Like, it's not even a case of, well, Cleveland, damn it, we deserve to have. Would it be conducive to it? I don't know.
I don't know if you want a Super Bowl here. I mean, it's a great thing to have, but I think that it would be pushing the limits of Cleveland right now. I think that All-Star Week is really fun for the NBA and MLB, and I think that the city has done a really good job with that. The Super Bowl is, I guess it would work here, but I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel like a fit here.
If we ever get a Super Bowl here in Cleveland, the halftime show will have to be Bohm and Lana Del Rey. I think that's Bohm. I think that's got to happen.
I'm on board.
He's a huge Lana Del Rey fan, and Bohm's got he's got some chops himself.
Starting to get a better picture of you, Bohm.
No. There's plenty more pieces to the puzzle. Don't worry. I'll get them to you. All right, Week 6, Bold Bald breakdown here on the Big Play Sports Network. Mike Chico, Borman, Nick Shook with you for about another half hour or so. One last thing that I wanted to touch on before we move into looking at Indianapolis, and then, of course, as we always do, finish up with a few notes around the league. The Browns, you hit on it initially there with the Browns' run game. The numbers look good.
Not as visually pleasing, but yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm getting at. Like, what did they do well? Did we see progress from, before? Because, this is pretty much what you're looking at. I thought Kareem Hunt at times looked like Kareem Hunt of old. The problem is, how long is that going to last? How much gas is in the tank?
Yeah.
But, it wasn't bad, but was it something you can hang your hat on going into next week?
So I found myself reckoning with the fact that without Nick Chubb, the Browns are not the same team with the same capabilities on the ground that they've been in the last few years, which is when they got the ball and they were marching down the field and trying desperately to get score a go-ahead field goal. They could not really rely on the run game to maybe bleed clock, to, establish some sort of pacing on the ground. Now, Jerome Ford did pop a couple of runs on that drive, but I just felt in my heart of hearts, that's not a viable way to do this. You're going to have to find some sort of mix. P.J. Walker's going to have to make a play. You're going to have to get bailed out, which they did a couple times with penalties. And in that moment, I realized that this team is never going to be fully capable of closing out a game the way they've been able to, and in with Nick Chubb in the lineup. And that's okay, because when it comes to the backfield that they have, you have slightly different runners. I think that Jerome Ford continues to slowly improve and give us chances, but I'm also concerned, and this is not a good time to say this considering he scored a rushing touchdown for the first time in ages on Sunday, but I'm also concerned that Kareem Hunt does not have the juice, because earlier in his career, he had some serious bursts that made him pretty special. I have not seen that with the ball. Now, the burst is there from the backfield, but to the second level and beyond, getting through the hole and everything else is just not there. I just don't see it visually.
Okay, then is that something, because again, he didn't really have any sort of ramp up.
Well, now I just kind of understand why they don't play him that much. And I see why he didn't sign when he went and worked out for a couple other teams. Maybe the expectation and reality just they could be close. They could be here and here.
All right, I'm trying to play glass half full here.
Yeah.
Is it because I hear what you're saying, and honestly, I kind of lean toward your side on this, but how much of this might be him just trying to play his way into shape? Because again, he didn't have a training camp. He is getting older, so might it take him another couple of games for him to really start getting or has that ship sailed in terms of
no? I don't think it's sailed.
No,
I don't think it's sailed. I think there's still a possibility for it. It's just what I can only go off of what I've seen so far. I've never been a good prognosticator except for when it comes to making picks. Second right now in pick rankings.
So the Browns had absolutely zero chance against the 49ers.
Even though I missed
That's why I have a show.
game
Don't
last
pretend you're not impressed.
But at the same time, I also I can only go off of what I have seen so far, and I haven't seen enough of him, honestly. But when I do see him run the ball, sometimes it's just not quite at the same level that I expect. So maybe he does get there. Maybe by the time he gets to week 8 or week 9, he plays a factor. He did play a part in this game.
Yeah.
But their offense as a whole is just so different from what it's been in recent years since they lost Nick Chubb that it's hard to get a gauge on where anybody is right now. I mean, the difference is at quarterback with you had 3 guys make starts now. The fact that Donovan Peoples-Jones has kind of disappeared in the last couple weeks. Amari Cooper emerging as your number 1, as he always should have been. David Bell making a fantastic catch in a gotta-have-it situation.
And Amari making a great catch.
Marquise Goodwin getting involved. Yeah. Elijah Moore, they're still trying the sweeps, and they're still not really working, but keep on trying because he can make plays. I will venture to say this before I end this rant. If P.J. Walker gets that first pass to Elijah Moore in a catchable area instead of at his feet on that last drive, that's a touchdown.
So what do you make? Okay, well let's just get to it here. What do you make of the conflicting reports? Because last week, we had some that were saying, you woke up one day and it was, well, you know what? He could be close. He might just play in Indianapolis. And then you'd see a report from Mary Kay, and an orthopedic surgeon is saying, that's a 2 to 6 weeks. And if he's really still not able to do much, it might be, the week started out with it could be a couple of games, few more games than he's already missed. And then by the end of the week, it was, well, you know what? Maybe he's going to play. And then after they beat San Francisco, it's like, well, we're going to go all in with optimism. We think he's going to play. So, I mean, where do you think this is actually at if you had to gauge it, Deshaun Watson possibly playing Sunday against Indianapolis?
This is why I think the NFL is king in America specifically, is because it's the week-to-week format allows us all this time to discuss this and get our head twisted into knots trying to figure out scenario A, B, C, D, all the way down to Z. Conspiracy theories come up.
Yeah.
Is he sitting out because he's upset with the coach? What is possibly happening, right? But
question my manhood.
Honestly, if it's a 2 to 6 week thing, right? We are now through 3 weeks. We should be on the back end of it. We should be expecting some sort of return at some time. All I know and all I've been told is that he's tried to, and it just doesn't feel right. And it's important. I mean, if you were a kicker, would you go out there with a messed up foot and you knew you couldn't strike the ball accurately? No. Does the toughness thing come into play? I think we've discussed that ad nauseum at this point. But I think it does matter when it comes to being able to throw the ball effectively, because let's say he couldn't in that game. Let's say he gets hurt, even worse, and he's out 2 months. Was it worth the risk? I don't know. I would wait until he's fully healthy, because now you could win without that type of play.
Okay. Again, week 6 of the Bold Ball Breakdown here on the Big Play Sports Network. Chico Borman, along with NFL.com, NFL Network's Nick Shook. The Indianapolis Colts, let's turn our attention to those guys. And obviously the Browns cannot take them lightly. Just ask the Baltimore Ravens. However, as we're talking about bad news and doom and gloom with quarterback news, Anthony Richardson, their rookie, it looks like is done for the year, because if somebody's going to announce that, it's going to be Jim Irsay, not a coach or a medical team. It's going to be the owner. But anyway, Anthony Richardson, you can wonder, and should he have been playing that earlier, if he's going to play that early with a little too reckless with him. I think some of these guys, even if they're not new to the league, but some of these guys, like, you watch Richardson play and the highlights look absolutely awesome. But then you look at Anthony Richardson and you go, son, this isn't college anymore. Like, when you get hit in the NFL, you're getting hit in the NFL and you're not able to bounce back. It's kind of a bummer to see him go down so early. But it looks like he's done for the year, and they're going to be dealing with Gardner Minshew.
It's been a weird year for Jim Irsay saying things on the record. We'll leave it there.
He's been in the news lately.
Yeah, we'll leave that there.
Yes, he has.
One of those things sorted itself out with money. I think when Cam Newton came into the league, you'd never really seen somebody like that in the modern game. And you never saw a quarterback who was as punishing of a runner as Cam Newton was, and how dynamic he was as a runner and a passer, where he could be a hulking running back that's going to run you over from an unorthodox spot as the quarterback. You could run read option. You could do all kinds of different things, QB power, whatever it is you want to do. You could do it with him. But what we saw by the end of his career was that takes a toll. And to see the Colts kind of approach Anthony Richardson in the same way, he's throwing probably a little bit more than Cam Newton did at that age. But they do run him on design runs, and it's worked. They've won games because of it. They've become a fun team to watch because of it. But I just think, man, every time he runs and he fights for a couple more yards and takes a hit and everything else, he's a big guy. He's a freak of nature. But I'm just like, Cam Newton, don't shorten your career with these types of hits. I had a discussion last night about Dak Prescott and how he's not running that much anymore. Well, he also had a gruesome ankle injury.
Oh, awful.
That almost cost him a lot of money, a long rehab. This is, valuing a quarterback's health is paramount in this league. I don't think you subject a guy to so many hits unless you absolutely have to. So I do worry about. It's early. I mean, this could be clipped and overblown and everything, but over the course of his career, I just don't think you can run him that much if you want him to be there for 10, 15 years, and we're already kind of seeing the product of it right now.
So I was going to bring this up a little bit later towards the end. We go around the league, but I think it fits here as well, so I'll bring it up. Josh
This is
Allen,
your world.
It is my world. I'm kind of ruining it, but doing the best I can. Josh Allen with the Buffalo Bills.
Don't get me started here.
See, I think what's going on is, and I don't. Well, I shouldn't say I know. As far as Josh Allen's health, okay, I think there was a time not long ago, 2-3 years ago, right, where we looked at Josh Allen and you legitimately said, and you heard NFL guys say, "How the hell do you defend this dude?"
Yeah,
he's 6'6". He's athletic as hell. He's got a cannon for an arm. But I want to go back to what we were saying with Anthony Richardson. Like, it's when you get hit in the NFL, it's just different. And it feels like see, I don't want to sit there and say, oh, well, the Bills and Allen were reckless. But, like, you kind of need him healthy. He's your franchise guy, so I understand that that's an element of his game that you want to take advantage of, but I also know that you can't take advantage of anything he does if he can't play, period. And I'm convinced that he's got something wrong again. It seems like he's constant. There's something that's always going to be there with him injury-wise, and I feel like he's that great example of a guy that, and here he is now a veteran, but those hits pile up.
This is a good, I think, comparison because it's the example of what the Colts don't want to be long term.
Yeah.
Josh Allen, a lot of what he did early in his career was on his own volition. He was just like, all right, I got to extend the play. I'm just going to go on these wacky runs downfield and scrape up my arm and bleed in a game against the Texans, and everything's gonna be crazy, and I'm like a gazelle or I'm like a fawn that hasn't quite learned how to run yet. And
I like how you were pseudo imitating that too.
I'm doing a little bounce around in the chair. Yeah, you can't see beneath the table, but I was moving my legs. There's only so much you can see on camera, and that's by design. What it became for the Bills though was they relied too heavily on it. They have one of the worst running schemes in the league. Like, they keep cycling running backs in and out. They've been doing this for like 3 years now. Zach Moss, who is now an Indianapolis Colt, there was nothing wrong with him. They went and drafted James Cook, and suddenly they didn't need Zach Moss anymore because they never really gave him a shot anyway. They traded him for Nyheim Hines because they needed a scat back who could also return kicks, which he did do well for the Bills. But at the same time, it's never been a personnel thing. It's been a scheme thing. I saw a report yesterday that they're looking at Leonard Fournette.
I saw that too.
That is not going to do anything different for you because you don't run the ball correctly anyway, and it's all back on Josh Allen. Not Josh Allen's fault, but because of how much they depend on him to run the football. They've fallen in love with the QB read option, everything else, and let's get Allen out there in space and make him hard to defend. But that, again, takes its toll. So, like, they're the culprits in this instance. It's not Josh Allen. That's just who he's wired to be, extend the plays. And he's actually gotten better at taking less risk over the course of his career. In fact, that's how the game went on Sunday night until he realized, like, I'm going to take about 3 risks to win this game because our offense is doing nothing right now because we have no run game. So I agree with you. I don't think that he looks entirely healthy. I don't know who the Bills are right now because at their best, they're a team that dominates the Dolphins, and at their worst, they're a team that barely beats the Giants on prime time. So I don't know. But it's a good lesson for the Colts to learn that you cannot do that with that guy. Just like Cam Newton, you cannot do it that often if you want to prolong a guy's career.
I always find it fascinating, though, and again, it's like, how long are you going to do this? Because at some point, if you keep playing with fire, you're going to get burned, right?
Yeah, that's the Dak Prescott lesson.
Right. And I also feel that way, like, Jalen Hurts, Shane Steichen, who, of course, now in Indianapolis, Shane Steichen he was applauded for, hey, you know what? We're not going to shy away from what Jalen Hurts does well. We're gonna have him run a lot at times, and that's just who he is. That's who we are as an offense. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, well, he's out towards the end of the year. Now they're struggling a little bit, which could be something entirely different. But I guess what I'm saying is it's always fascinating because you want to applaud those guys that say they're not afraid to do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like with the quarterback situation. You cannot play a rookie, which I agree with. But when guys say, you know what, I don't care what the majority of these guys are saying. We're going to do what we're going to do until it backfires. And eventually, let's face it, Nick, it will backfire. And I feel that's kind of what's happening with Josh Allen. I think it's what already happened with Anthony Richardson. Is Jalen Hurts going to get through this year? Philadelphia all of a sudden just looks like very ho-hum. I mean,
this is how week to week we are, because a week ago I was like, man, the Eagles look good, and then they go and lose.
They
get
Jets. To December and they're rolling. We're going to be like, oh,
yeah,
well, they're
I think that the Jets have a good defense, and we're not going to actually take that much away from it. But I like that point that you made about Jalen Hurts, because Nick Sirianni changed the course of his career as a head coach with the Eagles by embracing that offensive philosophy shift in the middle of the season. And they just said, screw it, we're not that talented in the way that we've been able to be successful in the past. Let's just run this read option from the quarterback who can devastate defenses with this. If you notice, though, since then, they don't do that as much. They still do it a little bit, but not nearly as much as they used to, because I think it's something you do out of desperation or to jumpstart an offense more than anything. When you know that you can't play traditionally or in an orthodox type of way, then you got to find a new wrinkle to get an edge against a defense. I mean, think about way back in the days of the Wildcat when Ronnie Brown and Ricky Williams were shredding teams, and they got stunning wins over something that we'd only seen in college football, and then everybody tried to do it, and much like the Eagles tush push now, brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it, it only works.
Bohm did that to somebody in the hallway. You got reprimanded.
Yeah, careful now. That's an HR violation, my friend.
Like that. Boom,
yeah.
Come on.
So I think that I don't want to say that Anthony Richardson is paying the price for that entirely, because he had a concussion and that's when he missed some time with first, and the shoulder thing was kind of weird. If you watched it, it wasn't like a huge hit or anything. Football's weird like that.
And I didn't think it was that serious. And then now they're saying that he's probably done for the year.
Yeah, they ruled him out pretty quickly in that game, and then I didn't think it was anything beyond that. The AC joint's a fickle part of the body. I'm not a scientist.
Keep in mind, Jim Irsay is the one that made the announcement, by the way.
We'll see. We'll see. It's the owner, so nobody makes a bigger decision or has more authority than the owner of a football team, but
nobody's more inebriated usually than Jim.
Don't subject yourself as a quarterback to situations in which he can, take more contact than he needs to.
All right, before we get to numbers that matter, give us a thumbnail sketch. The Indianapolis Colts, I already mentioned one of their wins this year against a Baltimore Ravens team that may have taken them a bit lightly, so hopefully that's a lesson for the Browns. Going into Indianapolis on Sunday, your thoughts on the Anthony Richardson-less Colts, and now going to be captained by Gardner Minshew?
I believe without opening up each of these games, they've only won one game without Anthony Richardson, and it was the Baltimore game, which was a very strange overtime game that the Ravens had about 9 chances to win.
Yeah.
I mean, Lamar did everything he could, and his teammates just did not help him in that game. I don't think the Colts deserved to win that game. They've been swept by the Jaguars already. They lost a heartbreaker to the Rams, in which the Rams scored a touchdown pass in overtime. Puka Nacua a game that the Rams almost actively blew because they had a bigger lead in that game than that. So they're a tough team to get a sense of. I think that they play decent defense, and when Richardson's in there, they have a pretty solid offense. And when Minshew's in there, they better run the ball well, and they have not run the ball well. At least they didn't last week. And then the week prior, they, like Zach Moss has been very hit or miss. He's got 2 games of over 100 yards.
Jonathan Taylor's
done nothing so far since he's come back. Their rushing total in this game on Sunday against the Jaguars. First, by the way, 37-20 was the final. They were down 31-6 at this point, at some point in this game, because Minshew turned the ball over 4 times, and Trevor Lawrence and co got short fields and everything else. But Taylor had 8 rushes for 19 yards in that game. You can't tell me Jacksonville's defense is better than the Browns. If I had a comparison, it's probably pretty similar. They play similarly. They're aggressive in similar manners, and they have talent that is pretty close. So if you want an example, I think that you could get a result much like this, where Minshew turns the ball over a lot. The only good thing is that he's going to be in the friendly confines of Lucas Oil Stadium, where the roof may or may not be closed. That's, by the way, the Browns going on the road for the next 3 or 4. That's going to be an interesting test, but I think that they're in a good position to win this game.
Indy, Seattle, Arizona's at home, right?
Mm-hmm. And Baltimore.
Baltimore, that's right, yeah. All right, well, let's get to it, and then we'll wrap up with some news and notes from around the league, including a very interesting game last night, which Nick wrote about for NFL.com. All right, numbers that matter. First one up's going to be 1. What is that?
This week, I decided to put it in chronological order. Kyle Shanahan's total wins versus Jim Schwartz as either a head coach or offensive coordinator. That's his total. One win. He did not make it 2 on Sunday.
Do you think deep down Schwartz knows what his record is? Or
Did you see the way he was grinning smugly as he walked up and down the sideline? That guy is either having a blast coaching this team, which he probably is, or he's like, I got you
again. All right, number that matter, 8.
That was the number of games in a row in which the 49ers had scored 30-plus points entering Sunday. Those of you who kept track of the score at home know that they finished with 17.
An abrupt halt to that streak. 12 as we go chronologically. I'll tell you, he's a sneaky one.
I feel like I'm on Sesame Street right now. No, the Electric Factory. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
right.
10, 11, 12.
I kind of feel the same way. 12.
It's a 12-game touchdown drought snapped by Kareem Hunt with his 16-yard rushing touchdown on Sunday, which very well executed play, by the way.
Obviously, going back to last year, I wouldn't have, but he was hurt in that, late too, and all that,
Yeah, he kind of disappeared from the offense, wanted to get traded, God, how times have changed.
Yeah, it has. All right, let's step it up to 13. Ooh, this one's not a good one, by the way.
13 accepted penalties against the Browns on Sunday. In total, combined with the 49ers, 25 penalties. Niner fans think that this is one of the worst officiated games they've ever seen. Browns fans think the same thing. The only difference is that the Browns won, and
there are a lot of calls that we in that game late that we're used to saying, "Oh my gosh,
this
is
happening to the Browns."
Again.
Yeah, it was funny because best friend again is at the game. He's like, every time we make a play, a flag comes in from the same ref, and then on the last drive for the Browns, I'm like, they just got all their makeup calls in one drive. Just another one. Although I gotta say this, I saw a few unnecessary roughness penalties over the weekend, and every time the player who was the color commentator took issue with it. And I could tell you that going back to the preseason,
Greg Olsen definitely had.
He had a problem with it. I think it might have been a Rondé Barber situation on another broadcast. I can't even remember because I've watched so many games at this point. But every time I see it happen, I hear the player take an issue with it. And they've all been similar hits. But I disagree with Greg Olsen in this regard. He said there was no forcible contact to the head or neck area. He puts a forearm in his face mask. That's the only. It's just like, well, we can't overlook that. Was it a great call? No. In real time, I was not surprised to see it thrown. But bottom line, all the former players are upset with how officials are officiating the game right now.
25. I thought they said that was the highest of not only the week but of the year. I'll have to double check.
It sure feels like it.
25 combined. All right, 15. We kind of mentioned this one earlier.
That was the 49ers' winning streak in regular season games, snapped by the Browns.
All right. 45.2. That decimal point tells you it might be QB related. And guess what? You're right.
It was P.J. Walker's passer rating. We told you it wasn't pretty, but it was good enough to win the game. It's also the lowest in a victory by a Brown starting quarterback since Baker Mayfield in Week 14 of the 2019 season. Anybody who remembers that season knows that by then nobody really cared very much at that point.
God bless you, Baker. 160. What do we got there?
That was the Browns' rushing total as a team. And it did not look like it on tape, but if you tally it all up, you add in Marquise Goodwin's 1 for 20. That's how you get there. That can help you win a game or at least stay in a game. They won time of possession because of that.
Okay, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it bears repeating again. 215.
That was the 49ers' yardage total against the Browns. The Browns have not allowed 300 or more yards to any team as a defense this year.
That's great. And then to think again.
That's absurd.
Kyle Shanahan has been with San Francisco since 2017. He has never had an output lower than the 215 that the Niners put out on Sunday.
And I was sitting back thinking, like, Kyle Shanahan's going to come back to Cleveland and get his revenge over the team that he asked to be fired by with a PowerPoint presentation, and that is not what he got.
I like this last one. I'm going to go ahead and read this one. Now, this is before we move into some of the Colts numbers, but Browns are the first team to have a negative turnover margin in 5 straight games and have a winning record since the 2005, they were then known as the Washington Redskins.
Yeah. I texted my buddy that little tidbit this morning, and he was like, wait, really? Yeah. It doesn't make sense, but the defense is playing well.
All right, Indy numbers, just a few to go over here. 4, this one's a biggie.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Gardner Minshew had 4 turnovers in that loss to Jacksonville. Every week I'd seen him play prior, he looked okay. He looked like a guy who's been in the league and was going to complete a pass here or there and keep you afloat and wouldn't necessarily finish off drives. He was abysmal against the Jaguars, absolutely abysmal. I don't know if the revenge game element had anything to do with it, trying too hard, but there was a sequence where he almost throws a pick to Devin Lloyd. I mean, like, just right at him. And then the very next play, he just sails it over his receiver into a sea of defenders where it's intercepted by Andre Sisco.
Is he still a big fan of jorts? Do we know?
I don't know. I think that novelty wore off. Everybody's more focused on that emotional Chargers fan from last night's game, so,
Yeah, well, he should have been emotional. 26 for the Colts.
The Colts ranked 26th in defensive yards allowed per game. That includes 18th in rushing and 23rd in passing. So if the Browns need a get-right game offensively, this may be the opportunity.
They've had some pretty decent defensive teams they face, so maybe a little bit of a let-up there. 44, Nick?
That was their total rushing yards in their game on Sunday. It was the lowest since Week 4 of 2022 when they had 38 yards against the Tennessee Titans. They're just not running the ball well, right? They're a one-dimensional team. They were lamenting it on the broadcast in the second half on Sunday.
And we'll end with this number because it does not bode well for Gardner or anyone affiliated with the Colts. Especially with the pass rush that the Browns have so far this season. 55 is...
That was the total number of pass attempts for Gardner Minshew in this game because, again, they were down 31-6. And he actually did kind of figure it out in the fourth quarter, but it was after it was a blowout. It got a little closer, but he just was dropping back and chucking it. And if he's dropping back and chucking it in a game like that against the Browns, it's not going to bode well, like you said.
All right, so the Browns 3-2, one hell of a win. I did not give them a chance. I don't think many people gave them a chance, but hey, that is why, as we started the show, they play the games, and they went out and got that win. They're now 3-2 on the season. They'll take on Indianapolis coming up on Sunday. All right, real quick around the league. We touched on something a little bit, Buffalo. I want to focus on last night's game. Now, a little bit of recency bias, I guess, but I was watching that, flipping back and forth with baseball. But I watched the end of it.
Remote maestro.
Of course I had to. And Justin Herbert. So management has been saying, Chico, all these numbers that matter come from Shook. Are you going to do any work at all?
I know that's a lie.
I said, well, I don't like to, but I will. Okay, so 16 is the number, Nick.
Oh.
Fourth quarter plus overtime interceptions for Justin Herbert since 2020 when he came in the league. That is the most in the league, tied with Matt Ryan. So in other words, late in the game, and Justin Herbert's considered, I guess this is what I want to discuss with you. Herbert is considered one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I think he is. Like, when you go down the short list, but is it? I mean, this year they went out and got Kellen Moore, and that was going to be, oh boy, look out! Now the fireworks are coming. I know you mentioned something about the loss of Mike Williams, but what's going on with the Chargers, and what's going on with your boy, as they say on PTI, your boy Justin Herbert?
I mean, plain and simple, last night was one of his worst games of his career. Statistically, he still had 2 touchdown passes and threw a pick that ended the game, but he was just off. I am curious whether he's entirely healthy. He has an injury on his non-throwing hand that he dealt with that he had the bye week to kind of recuperate from. He doesn't look comfortable. He doesn't look like – I mean, he usually what he's really good at, he's got a rocket arm, and he's really good at fitting it into tight windows, and he missed Keenan Allen 3 times downfield.
One of them was egregious.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would argue the 2 of them were.
Yeah, you're right.
Those are throws that he does not miss. Like, he's more accurate than that, and – he was either he wasn't comfortable in the pocket or he just flat out missed. And I would have to go back again and really watch his mechanics to try to identify whether there's something wrong there. And even then, I don't know if I'm going to find anything. I just think he had a bad game. This Chargers offense is not at the level I expected it to be by week 6. That's who they've been all year. They're just like a middling team right now.
And he brought in Kellen Moore to take it to that next level.
Who got owned by Dan Quinn last night. Quite frankly, in a 4th and 1, he calls a rollout to the short side of the field. There's a crosser, there's a shallow flat, and then they run Keenan Allen across the backside trying to get a throwback. He's double covered. Dan Quinn knows what's coming. He just spent years against you in practice. You think he's not gonna know exactly what you like to do in those situations? So, I just don't feel good about the Chargers. Losing Mike Williams has taken a big element out of their team. They had Austin Eckler available, and he didn't do anything last night. Their offensive line is still not very good. It's a little bit better than it was, but it's still not very good.
I mean, it feels like. You know, and we've been, first of all, with the Chargers, it feels like we've been saying the same things for the last few, like, okay, well, this will be the year, and then they haven't quite lived up to
I don't think it'll be the year until Brandon Staley's no longer the coach. I hate to say that. I really do, but I just don't think that that's the guy for them.
How much blame should Justin Herbert shoulder, though? I mean, because some of this is absolutely on Staley. I mean, look, They went into this year, and the idea was we're going to, avoid explosive plays or just even when he took over, just him taking over as head coach, hey, this is a guy, defensive mind, explosive plays are not going to happen. And it's not like they don't have talent on that side of the ball. I mean, you're talking about Bosa, you're talking about Derwin James. There's a lot of good players there. So
they make mistakes that bad teams make. Whether it's penalties, being out of position. I hated their discipline on their pass rush last night against a guy in Dak Prescott who can roll left or right. They did not do any sort of bracketing on the outside, especially in key moments where they would just overload a rush to one side and he could easily exit to the right. Like, these are basic things that I just don't like to see from a team. They just don't play clean football. And when you have enough talent on that team to win it, but your quarterback's not playing his best, and you don't play clean football, you lose games like you lost last night. And that's kind of just who they've been to this point so far.
Speaking of not playing clean football, the Dallas Cowboys, Mike McCarthy, again at the podium last night, asked about penalties. It's kind of like, Kevin Stefanski, and through the years, Hugh Jackson, I got to go watch the film. We got to be better. That's on me. But I know Dallas Cowboys fans, I was listening to a national show this morning, and this Cowboys fan called up, and he goes, you know what? I'm sick and freaking tired of hearing that every damn week. Like, he's got to be another one, right? Jerry, I think he wants to believe in Mike McCarthy. I think deep down he knows that Mike McCarthy is not his guy and is not going to. And part of this, yes, Dak Prescott is not, and as Dante Whitner said, he sucks. But like Mike McCarthy just really isn't Jerry's guy. As much as he wants to make it happen, it's not his guy.
I had Steve Berline slide into my mentions over the weekend. I haven't replied to him yet. I'm going to.
Look at you.
About Kirk Cousins, and he immediately compared him to Dak. And it's weird because I think if Dak was a Cleveland Brown, people here would love him, and then they would get frustrated because you'd kind of get the same thing you got with Baker Mayfield. You'd go into a game against the Chiefs in the playoffs, and you'd know that your quarterback wasn't good enough to win that game. That's who the Cowboys are.
Your playbook is limited.
Yeah. And it's not because he's not talented. Right now, it's because he's risk averse. He just doesn't want to take them right now.
Yep.
And And I think that the more important point, though, that you made was the whole Mike McCarthy thing. This is a guy who's been kind of on the hot seat since he showed up, since he had that sleepover at Jerry's house. I don't know. Like, it's weird because he had like a nice little like PR campaign of sorts about how he stayed working when he was unemployed.
I was just gonna say, even that was weird because that was like in a barn somewhere, and he'd invite buddies over.
Yeah, but like that's how his career in Green
Just
Bay
be normal,
ended.
Mike.
I've just never been a huge fan of him in his style, and I think that they kind of play like his personality. Like it's just he got a great coordinator, Dan Quinn. They let their offensive coordinator go, and Mike McCarthy took over, and their offense just kind of looks like Mike McCarthy's calling the plays. And I understand why a lot of people aren't sold on the Cowboys because I'm not either, but they are too talented to not take seriously throughout most. Like they have to bury themselves into their dirt nap in order for us to officially rule them out.
Who ends up like is Philadelphia when it's all said and done? Are they going to be what we thought they should be going into the season in the NFC East? Or is this...
I sure thought so last week.
That's weird.
This is why the NFL can mess with your brain because, look, it is an addicting drug. All right? We're not going to say it's not. Yeah. But you also have to understand its powers and that you need to limit yourself to a degree. Go find some fresh air and something else to think about. Now, Browns fans, you can revel in it. You're in the euphoric stage right now. But if you're a fan of a team that got upset like the Eagles or even a fan of the team like the Chargers who just find new ways to lose games, you need to understand that a new day is around the corner. Another game awaits your team, and we cannot make rash decisions off of one game.
If Herbert was the quarterback of the Giants, like it was reversed, Danny Dimes is out in L.A., Herbert was in New York playing for the Giants, would he get – because I don't know, he's not getting a pass, obviously, especially after last night, but I just wonder, like, would he be getting just fried every week with – the media attention.
Herbert?
Yeah.
Or,
like, let's say he and Dan
for last night's game, yeah. But not – no. I think that's actually a really interesting comparison that I've never been asked before, and it makes the gears turn because –
Chico Bortman Show.
This is where the hard-hitting real questions. This is where you find the real information. I'll say this. Daniel Jones would not be with the Chargers if he started his career with the Chargers. And – Justin Herbert would find the going tougher, but ultimately I think he would have gotten paid, rightfully so, by the Giants because a lot of Jones' career has been he doesn't have time to throw, and especially this year he has no time to throw. And then the one game they play without him, suddenly Tyrod Taylor's got time to throw, and they made some changes in the offensive line, and they're not that bad anymore. I think Herbert would thrive with that team more than Jones.
Herbert has everything you want. I mean,
I think he'll be fine.
6'6", cannon for an arm.
I just think
he's athletic.
Yeah, he just hasn't really hit his groove yet this year.
Weird. All right. We hit our groove roughly around 102. That's why we kept going a little bit later.
Yeah.
But
who has time limits?
We pay Nick for overtime as well. Somebody's in the back going, we do? Yeah. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
What's the rate on that? Invisible person in the back.
We'll get back to you on that.
Not you, Bone.
Great. He's worried about the tush push. He's going to execute here during the commercial break.
There's a few ways.
Nick Shook, NFL.com, NFL Network. Great breakdown from Week 6. The Browns over the Niners. Now they get ready to go on the road. Indianapolis Colts without Anthony Richardson. They'll have Gardner Minshew. We'll be right back here again next Tuesday at noon for the bald breakdown. Mr. Shook, any final thoughts, parting shots that you would like to make before you get out of here?
Supersonic Flight will be back in 2029.
And we will call it the Jack Sigma. We'll be back with more of the Chico Borman Show. Final hour on the way right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Alrighty, welcome back. It is, well, it's over now, the Bold Ball Breakdown Week 6. But Week 6, still breaking it down, still celebrating because yesterday I was not here. And no, it had nothing to do because I did get some of you messaging me like, Chico, did you not show up to work? Because no, I would never. Look. There are plenty of stunts that I've pulled over my career, but that wouldn't be one of them. Like, I would have, first of all, I would have happily, and I was saying it all game long, like, please, prove me wrong. As I said at the outset of the show, with Bold Ball Breakdown with Nick and now with the Chico Borman show, boom, I'm convinced, I was telling you before the show, if we would have had calls, and we, because we don't really entertain a lot of calls on the show and how the system's set up and whatever, no big deal. But all it would have taken was somebody last week, and you know how my buttons get pushed. They were pushed a little bit Friday. All it would have taken was somebody going, you know what? Hell with you, Chico. They're going to win. And I would have been like, look, dude, I hope you're right, but no, they're not. And if you want to make a bet, and I would have done something stupid like, Hugh running into Lake Erie, which is a little cold now, and there would be extreme shrinkage, even more so than there already is.
So one of my fantasy teammates told me he bet the Browns money line. I was like, dude, you're crazy. That there's no way that's going to hit. I'm sorry. Like, at least take the spread, right? So I was that guy, Chico. And then, of course, as soon as the clock hit zeros, he sent me the winning ticket. And, I was like, I'm so glad I was wrong.
You know me, and you heard me say this last Monday.
And I agreed with you.
Because I was trying to, beat around the bush a little bit. I'm like, well, and then you could just see, and then it was starting to get on my nerves, so I knew it'd be getting on others' nerves. Like, just say what you want to say. Okay, I think the Browns are going to get their asses kicked. And you know what? Good for them. Now, are they a great team? Great teams find a way to get a victory when you think there is absolutely no way they can. And that's what they did. But those same great teams then come back and they get a win against the Colts because, well, they should get a win against the Colts. And I don't care who's quarterbacking the Browns. And I'm not looking at, believe me, I'm not looking at the Colts like a pushover. If they don't, I want to see the same formula. The Browns can get up early, and see, that's the thing. Like, you'd love to say the formula should be get up early against the Colts and then pin your ears back and have Gardner Minshew throw it 55 times. Because if he throws it 55 times, my God, Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith and company might combine for 12 sacks. Exaggerating a little bit, but that's not a situation that Gardner Minshew or any quarterback wants to be in with that Browns pass rush, ears pinned back. The question is, can the Browns offensively, are they built that way? Without Nick Chubb, who we know is done for the season, and, well, we don't know. I don't think, Bohm, I don't know if you've heard anything today, or excuse me, tomorrow they're back on the practice field. We won't hear anything until tomorrow. It doesn't feel like he's going to play this week, and at least that's just my gut feel. I know there was some of that optimism floating around. Here's the thing: until I see a report that has him driving the football, and I credit the media. Some local guys and gals here were really trying to pry it out of Kevin Stefanski. Not will he play? They just wanted to know, hey, are you seeing him drive the ball more? Are you seeing him? Is there more velocity on it? And Kevin, of course, was like, well, we're not going to get into that. That's just all part of the healing process. He could have very easily said, yeah, you know what? We had some good news. He had some zip on the ball. We'll have to see how he responds after that. But of course, he said nothing. And that's okay. That's what he does. But in my gut, I just feel like he's not going to play on Sunday.
I'm with you, Chico. I don't really have a lot of optimism in that regard. But that being said, you're going to be going up against another backup, right? So this is a backup QB bowl. Obviously, you like the advantage of defense for the Browns.
Yeah.
And then offensively, and Shook hit on it. Like, PJ Walker was not all that great. He missed a lot of throws, but he did just enough, and he made some big-time throws, and that allowed them to get the run game going a little bit. And he was able to push the ball downfield at times. And he's going to, my hope is that it's only up from here because, A, I feel like San Francisco's defense is a lot better than Indianapolis. B, you're going to be in a dome, so you don't have to worry about the conditions. And then also, additionally, this is he's had more reps, more live game experience in this Browns offense. You just have to imagine that maybe he'll be a little more comfortable in his second week as a starter.
You know, I'm to the point now, just don't turn the ball over. I mean, because it could have been a lot worse turnover-wise, too. That's what, right now, I know it's not the sexy thing to say because you want him to go out there and, oh, wow, he did throw for 3 touchdowns. Just take care of the football because your defense is playing at such an elite level that if you can take care of the football, you're going to find yourselves within 2 or 3 plays already in Dustin Hopkins' range. And again, let me just say it. I said it on Twitter, Dustin Hopkins appreciation tweet. I know it's one of those, well, that's what he should do. And yes, he's doing what he should do. But damn it, if any fan base realizes how important, especially in a game like that, I mean, he misses a few of those important ones, they lose. They lose. And even still, you're thinking, man, if Jake Moody and I just we've seen that ending too many times. And I just kind of was, I don't know if you call it sad. I don't know if you call it, frustrating. I was just kind of resigned to, it's not that long of a field goal. Jake Moody was drafted in the 3rd round for a reason. Got his family there, right? Played at Michigan. And then, whoa, he pushed it right. I'm not used to that ending, Bohm. That's an alternate ending that we don't usually get here in Cleveland, Bohm.
By the way, Chico.
Yeah.
I saw some interesting analysis from Nathan Zagura, who does the color commentary for the radio broadcasts.
Very good. Does a nice job.
And supposedly, from what he said, the next-gen stats showed that the wind pushed that ball. Like, that ball was kicked perfectly. His foot was he hit it dead center. And the wind is what pushed that ball wide right. That was the difference.
Did the wind start or did it shift as soon as the ball was kicked? Or he's saying that because that's where I think Dustin Hopkins appears to, because it was kind of windy all day. It was just a matter of and wet at times. Has Dustin? It feels like Dustin Hopkins has become. It's almost like a master school. You want to grade him. Is he? He's getting a B right now as far as being able to read the conditions, and it's not easy to do in that stadium. But I get the sense that he, the way he was kicking those, and I can't get into the weeds with it because I don't know enough about, the whole kicking thing. But he was big. I mean, we're not talking about a win if Dustin Hopkins doesn't convert those. And like I said, I know it's what he's supposed to do, but God knows we've seen it the other way. I'm still amazed. I honestly, Bohm, I woke up this morning, and granted it was, 2 days removed from the game, and I still said, I can't believe that they won against the Niners. I just didn't see it coming. And I didn't think it was going to be particularly close. I mean, all of that. This defense is special. Man, if I'm Gardner Minshew, do not put me in a position, Coach, to have me throw the ball 55 times because I might not make it out of here alive. They might be taking me out in a body bag.
The problem is, last week in particular, your leading rusher is Zach Moss, who did have a rushing touchdown, but he rushed 7 times for 21 yards. And then Jonathan Taylor was rushing even worse. So it's just totally ineffective. If you can leave that Indianapolis Colts team where they have no choice but to make the game or put the game in Gardner Minshew's hands, you got to like your odds.
Last thing I'll say on this, and then we'll kind of shift gears a little bit, get into some other stuff. I really want to see, and I know we've been talking about this for a while, and even the Browns have mentioned it at times, but David Njoku needs to be more involved in the offense. Like, he's a really difficult matchup, and I know I'm stating the obvious, but like, okay, why can't it be more obvious as far as him in the game plan? Amari Cooper's your number one target. No mistake about it. Fine. Elijah Moore, they're still trying to figure out how they want to, work him in. But like David Njoku, all we heard, and then I go back to the preseason. I know it's preseason, but there were two certainties leaving camp. One, Myles Garrett's a terror and continues to be a terror. And two, nobody could cover David Njoku. Okay, I mean, you can say camp all you want, but like, the dude's a freak, and the dude's very athletic, and the dude, he's also a tight end that doesn't have to come off the field, because he's a solid blocker as well. But get him the football more. I just feel like they're a completely different offense, or at least more of a threat, and he's more. You get him in there. Now, all of a sudden, those safeties, somebody's matched up on him that more oftentimes than not, depending on the safety, and maybe even a linebacker at times, more often than not is going to be matchup favor Browns, advantage Browns. Got to take advantage of that.
To be fair, he did have a touchdown called back on what some might consider to be a bogus call. He had two catches called back, actually, if I'm not mistaken, because of dumb penalties. So
right, but what I'm saying is, up to this point, like, there's been times during this, albeit short, where he's not.
I did expect more output out of Njoku.
My point is, from this moving forward, like Indianapolis this Sunday, let's get him the football more. Make it a priority. Get him the football more. But we shall see. All right, we come back. We're going to play a little fair or foul. Also, Cavaliers, it won't be long. What did I tell you, Bohm? A week from tomorrow.
October 25th.
Which is, that is a week from tomorrow when the Cavaliers open up their season on the road. But we'll get into a little bit of that. Wow, Friday night, didn't have a chance to comment on this. Old Deion Sanders. Bro, you can't be blowing 29-point leads to Stanford. You just can't. I mean,
this isn't the Christian McCaffrey Stanford either.
No, and that's a pretty anemic offense, and on top of it, like, Travis Hunter was getting schooled. Like, I hope he's healthy. I don't think he would be playing if he wasn't healthy, because that was definitely a priority for Deion. He wouldn't let him come back until he was healthy. Travis Hunter I watched that in the second half, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Like, there's no way they're going to complete. Yeah. And Travis Hunter was getting burned play after play. All of a sudden, and I'm rooting for Deion. I am. But, you out of the gate, you had all the attention and all, but with that now you know why. You look around college football, even NFL, like, the ability to getting on top and getting momentum. I don't want to say it's easy, because it's not. But getting momentum and then maintaining momentum and maintaining consistency is very, very hard. It's why Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, guys like that are just on a different level than everybody else. Belichick now might be out the door, but you get what I'm saying. To do it that long and to maintain that hunger and maintain that consistency, consistently great, is as tough as it gets. Getting it, it's a little difficult, but how can you hang on to it? And I think Deion's finding out, like, wow, because that just shouldn't have happened. I mean, you lose to USC like that, okay. Stanford, and like you said, good point, this is not Christian McCaffrey Stanford. That was not a good offensive team. and you were spotted a 29-point lead. We'll talk more about that. We got baseball playoffs as well, and we got fair or foul on the way also. It's the Chico Borman Show. More to come on this Tuesday edition right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Alrighty, welcome back. Chico Borman Show on this Tuesday afternoon. Good to have you along. Bohm producing, of course, earlier, if you missed the Bold Ball breakdown with my good pal, Nick Shook, NFL.com and NFL Network. You can check it out. We have replays on iHeartRadio. Also, you can find it on iTunes or Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can go check it out there as well. Really good stuff from him. As we talked about the San Francisco win, the big San Francisco win, and then getting ready for the Anthony Richardson-less Indianapolis Colts coming up on Sunday. Real quick, I got to say this because we've had, I don't even know if I'd call them issues. It is what it is. Like we have screens here in the studio. Studios, I love this studio. I love our location. I mean, it's just, it really is just awesome. But we have screens in the studio, and sometimes they're all synced up to one thing, and sometimes they've got three different things. But the two below me, like just there's two like right here that are out of the picture. They are frozen on nothing other than Joe Buck's face. Like it's like a Joe Buck. He's like, so he's getting ready to say something, and
both TVs are clearly the same game, right? And it seems like the exact same scene of Joe Buck, but they're frozen on two different Joe Buck faces.
But see, that would be from old school because he's not doing baseball.
Oh, it's definitely baseball.
No. But what I'm saying is, he's not doing
You're right.
baseball now, and it's like he's basically said that was a big story. I'm not going to do network baseball anymore. So and judging by the hair too, you can always tell with the hair it's darker. He's got a little bit more of it. So this was back, I don't know if it was a replay or somebody.
Definitely a replay.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering. I hope I said to you, I hope it's not a trigger for some people because there are people that, and I don't understand it. Somebody has to. I know we've had this discussion before. I don't understand. I think I accused you of also being one of those. But I don't understand why people hate Joe Buck so much. Like, I don't know if people understand how good he is at his job. Not only football, baseball, and I hear occasionally oh, well, he likes to hear himself talk. Give me one of those announcers Bob Costas loves to hear himself talk. Bob Costas is a Hall of Famer. But Joe Buck, is it just the Kyle Schwarber thing?
To me, it's not so much the bias that that is my critique of him.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's a problem. And I do have immense respect for Joe Buck as a broadcaster. I think he's incredibly intelligent and quick-witted. I've heard him off the air when producing Browns games on the radio, right? And you hear him just mingling with the hosts and everything in the booth, and he sounds so awesome, such a great guy.
Yeah.
My one knock on him is sometimes he feels a little monotone. The excitement isn't there.
See,
That's why. So when I brought him up the last time, it was that Garrett Wilson touchdown catch for the Jets. I remember, and I said that was the most excited I've ever heard Joe Buck. I've never heard him raise his voice like that.
Oh yeah, and again, I've been watching him longer, but no, I think he's one of the best in the business, and I'm kind of sad that he won't be calling baseball anymore. But anyway, yeah, it just so happens. I don't know how this happens. Friday we came in here. And I felt like I was watching Cinemax After Dark back when it was a thing, and you always wanted to. I may or may not have, as a teenager going through puberty, would try to unscramble as best I could some Cinemax After Dark. So Friday show, there was some interesting television, some interesting programming on, and it was not X-rated, by the way, for anyone. I don't want anybody, But then today I come in after that, and today it's Joe Buck. So I don't know. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I hope that people walking by are not triggered. Those that just part of me thinks that some of you, it's an act with Joe Buck. You feel like you have to hate Joe Buck because a large majority of the population says they hate Joe Buck, which is dumb. Dumb. All right, go ahead, Boom. Did you want?
No, I was just gonna say, I've got to watch out for those algorithms, Chico. They'll take you down some wild rabbit holes when you just let it just go and go.
I wonder, do you know how to control the TVs in here, Boom? We've had this conversation.
Actually, kind of, yes. I can't control what it plays after a video ends, but I could put on if I wanted to put the Chico Borman show on these televisions, I have figured out how.
Yeah, I'd like to.
I thought that Joe Buck being frozen on two different faces in the exact same game, it felt memeable, so I didn't want to take it down. For someone not very familiar with social media, I can say that does look very memeable. Right? I just got to figure out how do I put this together?
Yeah.
How do I concoct this the right way?
Real quick, before we get to fair or foul, I wanted to pass this along because I find it pretty interesting. Apparently, I had it here and I think I lost it.
Uh-oh.
But that's okay.
Got away from you.
It's involving Kevin Porter Jr.
Oh,
were you going to have this in fair or foul?
No, I was not.
Okay, I didn't want to ruin it, but
I can only imagine what direction this might go in when you bring him up.
So he is, I believe, going to get traded, I believe is what I heard. And then Oklahoma City is going to waive him. He's going to get traded to OKC, and then OKC or somebody's got to report that they're just going to outright, waive him. So he's going to be available. I know it's tempting, but this guy, there's a reason why he hasn't stuck. And like even with Cleveland, like, oh, what a steal. You know, the Cavs got him late and he came in but then you find out, oh, well, he kind of got into it because and it was something stupid. Like one of the guys came up on like a 10-day and had a locker and he thought somebody stole his locker. So he got all upset about it and then was all upset at Kobe about it. Like went after him. And it was kind of like, okay, well, we've got no choice here. I mean, the guy, even back to his USC days, he was there's red flags. I don't want to mess with that. And I know that's kind of they've got a nice culture here. They've got I'm sure he's talented as hell. It's not a talent issue, but I don't want to rock the boat any more than you have to. I really don't. I think JB has worked very hard at that. There are things they got to improve this year. We've talked about it with Chris Fedor, among others. They got to get tougher. They need better shooters. And sure, he would help in that regard. But you've got a good thing going culture-wise that was not easy to turn around. And as quickly as you get it, it can just as quickly go away if you bring in somebody who's poison. And Kevin Porter Jr., love him or hate him, is kind of a poison. I don't want him.
I'm with you, Chico. And I was the biggest Kevin Porter fan when he was in Cleveland. Like I wanted his jersey. I was such a huge fan of Kevin Porter Jr.
Oh,
okay?
he was. I mean, you watched him in college. When you watched him at USC, like he was a stud. But again, the reason they were where did they get him? 30th?
Yeah,
whatever it was.
Yeah,
I mean, he was easily a top 10 pick.
I thought it was a steal,
and it was. I mean, of course. Well, why is he available? Well, because there's all these red flags. And then, okay, he'll be fine. No, and then here we go again. And I know it's tempting. I get it. But, nah.
Yeah.
I don't think you can take that chance.
Okay, no, I know this. I guess this is premature for fair or foul, but fair or foul, Kevin Porter is a locker room cancer.
Yes. Oh, fair.
And it's different than, like a Dylan Brooks who does some, you might say, he does it on and off the court, right? Like you saw the stuff that he did in the preseason to get ejected from a game when he hit a guy below the belt. With Kevin Porter, a lot of none of it has to do with on the court.
And here's the other thing. Like, I mean, what's the reason why he's available? Like, I mean, if he was going to help a team, he'd be on. And I guess that's where, like, if we're talking about a guy that it just became a numbers game, but he has really done a lot to turn it around. And hey, you know what? He made a point to apologize to Kobe Altman. Because I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to. This isn't something I want to get totally wrong, but he essentially it became a physical altercation until they broke it up. Like he was that upset. Thinking some guy signed in a 10-day, if I remember correctly. My memory's a little fuzzy here, but that a guy signed on a 10-day. He thought took his locker and just completely went berserk and wanted to charge like Kobe Altman. Like, dude, just talk it out. What the hell are you doing? You can't have guys like that. So, I mean, look, it's tempting because he is extremely talented, but no, thank you. And I'm seeing a lot of comments. Cavs, hashtag Cavs, eyeball emoji, Cavs, Kevin Porter. We'll see. We shall see. All right, boom, it's time. We've waited long enough, an hour and 40 minutes, for God's sake. It's time for a Tuesday edition of Fair or Foul.
All right, Chico. Well, I want to start things off because we haven't gotten to it today. Obviously, we didn't have a show yesterday, so I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Ohio State. Did you happen to watch the game on Peacock?
I did. Yes, I actually. Where I got it, I have a subscription for YouTube. Shout out to YouTube, who obviously also hosts our show or has our show. But so that's what I have, at least for the next 3 months, and it carried that on there. But it is frustrating. There were a lot of fans really, really ticked off they couldn't get the game.
Yeah, I had to listen to Paul Keels, and look, I love the voice of the Buckeyes, and it's
Voice
funny
of
getting
God.
him the shade.
2nd and 8 for the Buckeyes.
But it's like Ohio State propaganda. Like it's very Ohio State biased, and I can't see for myself like what's actually happening.
Boy, now that is some rich talk right there. Because I would think if anybody loves the Ohio State bias talk, it would be you.
Yeah, but I want to be I want to be a realist too. I'm trying to be. I'm not saying it's always easy, but I'm trying to be.
Okay.
And you hear a lot of things that Paul Keels calls in Ohio State's favor. But that's beside the point. This is just a genuine question for you, Chico, because obviously with me having not seen it, fair or foul, it was a spotty performance from Kyle McCord. I think there was a little bit of inconsistency, but at the end of the day, they started to get it going. Few big throws to Marvin Harrison Jr., who took a lot of it into his own hands. But fair or foul, you're encouraged by Kyle McCord here heading into Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I feel about the same. Like, I think what I'm hoping for, Penn State is physical. First of all, I mean, up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage, one of the things, I was talking to a buddy of mine who's a diehard Penn State guy, went to Penn State and all that, kit and caboodle. And they really haven't, like, they've got 2 really good running backs, but they haven't really had a game where they've been able to get them both going, or at least try to get them both going. And my fear is that they're going to try to do that with Ohio State and have success in that regard. And then, of course, that opens things up for Drew Aller. This is, if the Buckeyes don't play physical, forget about Kyle McCord for a moment. If the Buckeyes are not physical, this is a game that there's no way they're gonna beat Penn State, because Penn State is gonna come in, and I think right now it's Michigan, it's Penn State as far as physical teams. I'm not saying the most talented, but if you're talking about teams that are physical up front, both sides, Penn State's one of them, and Ohio State could have their hands full on Saturday.
Now, I know we've talked about this in the past when James Franklin made the comment that this isn't a rivalry game, but does Penn State feel like a rival to you, Chico?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. It should be. I've said this so many times, and I feel like I'm, beating a dead horse on it. Sorry, Peter. But I think, first of all, the proximity. Second of all, you are talking some of the best football recruits in the entire country are coming out of those 2 states. The Big 33 game, and real talent. And you go back, and I realize, like, Penn State didn't join the league, and I think it was 93 was their first year. God, that was my freshman year of college. Holy mackerel.
I was 1 year old.
Yes, you were. Joey Galloway, if I remember right, had a really good game. That game, it was snowing a little bit on Halloween. But some of those matchups have been, like, right down to the wire. Plus, you've got an atmosphere. We won't, unfortunately, we won't be able to get a chance to see it. I know this one is here, but even if it was at Penn State, probably would still be a high noon game. But some of the atmospheres they've had, the crowds they have, yeah, it definitely feels like a rivalry. And the biggest reason it's a rivalry is, the loser's going to be on the outside looking in, and the winner still, is maintaining pole position here. If the Buckeyes win, I think we're all saying it's going to come down to them in Michigan. But if Penn State, and I think Ohio State's only a 3-point favorite, 4-point favorite.
Yeah, it's a slim spread.
It's going to be a ball game. There's no doubt in my mind it's going to be a ball game.
Yeah, and I think the big X factor here for me is Drew Aller, because it's been kind of a rocky start where you see some of the potential, but he's also, like, been hesitant to push the ball downfield. But this is his hometown school playing against them, and they didn't recruit you. I wonder if this carries extra meaning for Drew Aller.
Well, what I wonder, because, okay, along those same lines, I was saying I was having conversations with a Penn State guy. Another thing they've said is they haven't, at least a lot of the talk shows and whatnot are saying, and message boards and things, they're not really opening it up for him. Like, they're kind of being training wheels with him. And it's like, dude, the guy's got, I mean, you heard Joe Klatt. Joe Klatt just raves. Drew Aller's got a cannon. But they're being real. But is that an opportunity? Is that a game they try to do that with him on Saturday? I don't know. What scares me right now, I feel like our linebacker play, like they've been out of position a few times, and that's kind of to go back a little bit. Their defense as a whole is still playing well for the most part, but like making wrong reads, Tommy Eichenberg doesn't do that, but he has over the last couple of games, and that stuff's a little concerning for me.
Yeah, and I also wonder if this is another game where, because last year, this was the time when JT Tuimoloau really burst onto the scene.
Oh, God.
I wonder if he's going to make his presence known again.
The stat sheet stuffer, yeah.
Last thing I'll ask you about Ohio State before we move on, because they broke out this new Devin Brown package at the goal line, right? And you got a little bit of good and bad. He rushed for a touchdown, but then they tried it again, and he loses a fumble. Fair or foul, do you like this new wrinkle in the Ryan Day offense?
Yes. Because if for no other reason, do something different. Do something to get it started. Because whatever you've been doing, and I'm not naive enough to think that it's just that, like Devin Brown playing the court. But you know what? If he's the catalyst that gets it going, then so be it. I mean, this has been an issue. Short yardage situations for the Buckeyes have been an issue all year. But if Devin Brown's, especially down there, I mean, this is right now you're talking about you're going to be playing some games where 6 is a hell of a lot different than 3. So, yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, if they found something with it and Devin Brown can take care of the football and it gives the defense something else to think about, do it. Because they need to be much better in that and should be much better in that area.
All right, well, I want to shift gears to another college football game that was certainly an eyebrow raiser. And I think during last Friday's Pick 6 segment where we pick 6 football games from across the college and NFL landscape, we talked about that Notre Dame USC game. And
I forgot. I was dead wrong on that one.
I thought it was going to be close. I didn't expect that. But with that said, I mean, just an ugly performance from Caleb Williams. And then you look at like Washington where Michael Penix Jr. was just dropping dimes yet again. Fair or foul, Chico, Caleb Williams is still the front runner for that Heisman.
Foul. I don't see how. Now, I know this is two-part. Like, one, he played a horrible football game on a huge stage against a good opponent and a rival, obviously. So, just from those optics, it doesn't look good. But really, the guy across from him, Michael Penix, that's the guy that I think right now takes the play. I mean, he looked phenomenal. So no, all right. Let me ask you. I'm just curious. Back to Ohio State for a second. There are certain things. It's kind of how the Dolphins celebrated. The Eagles went down. You know what I'm going to say. The Eagles went down. The Niners went down. No undefeated team. Popped the champagne again. 72 Dolphins. I don't want anybody to get Archie's Heisman thing.
I'm with you, Chico.
I mean, if it's, and I have nothing against Caleb Williams, but like, if somebody's going to get it, I want it to be like, all world, and he's great. Now, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm trying to talk myself into there is a certain play. There isn't one. I want, that is something very, very special. I don't want anybody to join Archie in the 2 Heisman Club.
Now, if it were another Buckeye, do you think you'd be open to it?
That's a great question. Yes. Because my guess is if he was a Buckeye, I would like him. Archie would certainly embrace it as well. But yeah, you're right. Good question. I would if it's a Buckeye, but selfishly, and I know it's really petty, I don't want to see any more two-time 2-time Heisman Trophy winners. I just don't. I want
Yeah.
that to be Archie and only Archie.
Yeah, I love that it's like exclusively something done by an Ohio State player.
2-time Heisman winner. Only one guy can say it.
Yeah, it does fill you with pride as a Buckeye fan, right?
Yep.
So with that said, though, I wanna move on to the NFL, and I want to ask you about this Browns game. So, most penalized game thus far this season, over 220 yards and penalties, just absurd. A lot of outrage from all directions: 49ers fans, Browns fans, media members. I've seen it everywhere, but
25 total.
yeah, there was one that had received some blowback in particular, and that was. So PJ Walker targets Elijah Moore late on that final drive, right? He targets him 3 times in a row and he just misses him, which is just really frustrating. Like, he was open, wide ass open.
Yeah.
You got to hit that pass. But on the 3rd time, Elijah Moore draws a penalty, right? And it's considered a hit on a defenseless receiver from a San Francisco 49ers defensive back. I want to ask, do you think that flag was fair or foul?
Foul. I mean, look, the Browns, I know it's going to be looked at in terms of, hey, and no, I'm not asking anybody to apologize. I'm not apologizing. But the more I looked at it, no. I mean, he clearly, it was shoulder. But the Browns have had that called on them numerous times. So, yeah, nobody should or will apologize. But it was a bad call. It was a really bad call.
Yeah, I mean, I hated to see Elijah take that shot. But, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you would. I would have hated it more if it was. I mean, at first glance, live, I'm like, oh, absolutely. I think I was yelling it, like, throw the flag. You know, that's definitely. And then when they showed it, I'm like, ooh, wow.
Looked like a pretty bang bang play.
But it's something that they can't. You know, it stands. So hey, Browns have had it happen to them many times. That said, I thought it was a terrible call.
Yeah, there were a lot of questionable calls in that game, right? And some of them felt like makeup calls. I'm just glad the Browns won. Whatever. That's all that matters. Moving on, Chico. I want to talk a little bit about that game from Monday night where the Chargers fell at the very end to the Dallas Cowboys, which, by the way, that CeeDee Lamb catch to put them inside the 5, it won me a fantasy matchup and it lost me a fantasy matchup. I won by 0.1. In the league, in that league, but then I also lost in the other league so yeah, I don't know how to feel about that, but I digress. That's not the question. I just thought it was interesting. I mean, like,
it is
1, that is the closest
That's
margin.
when you play multiple leagues, that stuff will happen.
Yeah,
and
how the tables have turned.
Yeah.
But anyways, so I want to ask you on the other side about the Chargers, and Nick Shook kind of took some of my thunder here when he brought it up, but I wanted to ask you, Chico, fair or foul, the Chargers need to move on from Brandon Staley.
Okay, right now,
Do you pull the plug on it?
Right now, no.
Too soon?
But I think, I mean, the seat was warm going into the season, and you know, even though some of this is on Justin Herbert, like I said, and I really like Herbert as a quarterback, but like big moments, man, that dude really shrinks. But that said, like, you know, Brandon Staley, there's just something that's not happening. And you look at, I think over the last 2 years, what was the stat? Over the last 2 years, I wrote it down here. The Chargers have had 11 games decided by last year and then into this year's games. 11 games decided by 3 points or less.
Wow.
They have lost 6 of those.
Oof.
Like,
A lot of heartbreak out there in L.A. Good thing their fans aren't so passionate.
I was going to say, good thing their fans don't give a damn. That's why I asked him that question about, like, if Herbert, like, I don't want to overdo it. Like, Herbert's a better quarterback than Danny Dimes and Herbert.
Absolutely.
But, like, he's picking bad times to have his worst moments. And, you know, he had some, my God, he had 2 passes, one in particular I can think of, to Keenan Allen, that it was
missed
like,
him wide open.
He could not have been more wide open.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a mess there, and it just seems like same old Chargers is what you're saying to yourself.
Yeah, and we heard Nick Shook say it in the last hour, right? That was the worst game of Justin Herbert's NFL career.
Yeah.
And maybe his whole career. And We'll see how he bounces back, Chico. But that's going to do it for today's Fair or Foul.
That's going to do it for today's Fair or Foul, says Mr. Bombastic. We are out of here for this Tuesday. We'll be back at it again tomorrow, talking a lot of baseball playoffs. Oh yeah. Rangers taking a 2-0 lead. So we'll talk about that. Also, you look over, I'll tell you what, you look over in the National League, and the Phillies right now with Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. Like, Zach Wheeler, this guy's a stud, and Nola's a stud. But you talk about getting hot at the right time, and I know it's very early in the series, but it's just, timing is everything right about now. And, boy, I think a Rangers Phillies World Series would be extremely entertaining. We shall see. We'll talk to Booney about that tomorrow coming up at 1. Thanks to Nick Shook. Joined us in hour 1 for the Bold Bald Breakdown. I'm Mike Chico Borman. He's Michael Bohm. Do it again tomorrow at noon. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday afternoon, everybody. See ya.